They say you should never open a locked box if you do not know who locked it, but that night, under the flickering street light, with the rain whispering against the tin roof, I found one sitting in the middle of the alley as if it had been waiting for me. The wood was dark with age, the brass latch dulled and scarred, and yet, the moment my fingers brushed against it, I felt a pulse, like the heartbeat of something alive inside it. I told myself to walk away, and yet my legs betrayed me, because curiosity is a chain you cannot see, but it pulls you harder than steel. I carried it back to my apartment, ignoring the way shadows seemed to follow me up the stairwell, and the air grew colder with every step. I set it on the table and just stared at it, feeling the strange weight of silence pressing in from all sides. It was not an ordinary silence, it was the kind that feels heavy, as if sound itself is afraid to move. My hands shook as I undid the latch, and the lid creaked open just enough for me to see a scrap of paper resting inside, folded once, with my name written in a handwriting I recognized instantly, but should not have, because it belonged to someone who had died 5 years ago. I froze, staring at the black ink letters, feeling the hairs on my neck rise. The city outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the faint ticking of my clock and the racing of my heart. I reached in slowly and picked up the paper, unfolding it with the kind of care you give to something that could burn you even without fire. There were only 6 words written, but they made my mouth go dry, because they said, "I never left the room." I looked around, half expecting someone to be standing in the corner, but the apartment was empty, or at least it appeared empty. And then I noticed something strange. The furniture was not in the place I remembered, my coffee mug was on the wrong table, my coat was draped over a chair I had never owned, and the window was showing a street I had never seen. I told myself I must be dreaming, but dreams do not have the cold taste of metal in the air, they do not have the faint smell of smoke drifting from a place you cannot find. I stepped back from the table, and my heel hit something soft. I turned and saw a second box, identical to the first, sitting where it had not been before, the latch already open, and inside, another folded paper. I opened it without thinking, and this one said, "You left the door open." I turned sharply to my apartment door and saw it was indeed ajar, darkness filling the gap like a liquid pouring into the room, and as I stared, it felt like the darkness was watching me, not the other way around. I took a step toward it, and the air seemed to thicken around me, pressing on my chest, making each breath an effort. I could hear something faint beyond the doorway, like the dragging of bare feet over wet stone. The sound grew louder, then stopped abruptly. I waited, my pulse pounding in my ears, then, slowly, the darkness at the doorway began to shift. It was not someone standing there, it was the absence of someone, the shape of a figure made entirely of shadow, and yet somehow heavier than any human. It stepped forward, and with each step, the floorboards creaked as if under a great weight. I backed away until my legs hit the table, and the box slid to the floor with a dull thud. The shadow stopped at the center of the room, and though it had no face, I could feel its attention pinning me in place. Then it raised one arm and pointed, not at me, but at the wall behind me. I turned slowly and saw a third box, resting on the shelf where my books should have been. The latch was sealed with a strip of cloth tied in a knot that looked disturbingly like a noose. I pulled it down, unable to resist the urge to know what was inside. I tore the cloth away and opened it. Inside was not a paper this time, but a small silver key, tarnished and cold to the touch. The moment I picked it up, I knew it was meant for something, but not in this apartment. I glanced back to the shadow, but it was gone. The room was empty again, the air lighter, and I could hear the city outside once more. I pocketed the key and left the apartment, walking quickly down the stairs and out into the rain. I had no idea where I was going, only that my feet seemed to know the way. The streets twisted in ways I did not recognize, until I found myself in front of a building I was certain I had never seen, and yet I somehow knew it intimately. The door was locked, of course, but the key in my pocket felt warm, as if urging me to try it. I slid it into the lock, and the door swung open with a sound like a sigh. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old wood. The hallway stretched far longer than it should have, the light bulbs flickering overhead. I walked forward, each step echoing too loudly, until I reached a door at the very end. It was painted black, and in the center was a single word carved deep into the wood, my name. I put my hand on the knob, but before I could turn it, a voice from the other side whispered, "Come in." I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small, barely furnished, except for a chair, and on that chair sat me, or at least someone who looked exactly like me, same clothes, same face, same faint scar on the chin. The other me smiled, but it was not a friendly smile, it was the kind that knows things you do not. They gestured to the floor at my feet, and I looked down to see a fourth box, this one larger than the rest, the latch broken as if it had been forced open. I knelt and lifted the lid. Inside was nothing but a mirror lying flat, reflecting the ceiling. I touched it, and the surface rippled like water, pulling my hand through before I could react. I was falling, the darkness swallowing me whole. I landed hard on cold stone, and when I looked up, I was in a corridor lined with countless boxes, all different sizes, all with latches, some open, some closed. In the distance, I could hear that dragging footstep again. I knew then that the boxes were not just boxes, they were doors, each one leading to a different room, a different version of reality, and I had opened the first one without understanding the cost. Now, the shadow was moving toward me, and the corridor seemed to stretch further with every heartbeat. I realized that if I did not find the right box and close it behind me, I would be here forever, trapped between rooms, in a place where nothing stays dead, not even me.